You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
Well, hello, my lovelies. Welcome to an episode of Gingerarchy. I'm your host, Trishee Stewart-Mann. And tonight I have an awesome guest. He's a friend of mine. We're going to have a conversation about something that's going on right now in the country. And it's something that we have a little bit of interest in. His name is Hodey Johns. Some of you may know him. Yeah, some of you may know him from the We Are Libertarians network. Hodey is a lover of all things economical. He loves the moving picture games.
All this true so far. Yeah.
Yes. And he is one of the last true anarcho-capitalists in the world. But I gave you a poor introduction, Hodey. So tell my guests a little bit about yourself, like what you're about, how you came to Liberty, and what you're doing now.
Oh, sure. So I definitely made the right to center libertarian swing. I was a Republican. I never really loved the social conservative stuff. My swing over to Liberty finally happened because I actually thought the Republicans were like really close. Like, oh, we're going to be serious about the economy, and then we were going to be like socially inclusive. And I was like, oh yeah, because that's obviously the path to victory. Basically being a libertarian, but saying you're a Republican, right? But that whole movement did not work out. And it was the way it didn't work out that made me leave. The RNC essentially was like, we would rather lose with our candidates than win with your candidates. And it was friendly fire. It was Republicans against Republicans. And they would challenge our signatures, basically all the stuff libertarians have to go through all the time. But they were just like, no, we're going to take our establishment candidates that will spend big bucks and completely ignore, family values and favor them for like KKK values, because that's where the money's at. And and that's what they did. After that point, I kind of knew there was no way it was going to happen through the Republican Party. I went to the Libertarian Party. Obviously those values much more matched what I was trying to do. And then from there, it was only a couple years till you kind of find the anarcho side of everything and just say, hey, if Republicans suck at these things, if government sucks at doing something, what are they good at? And if that answer is nothing, well, then you kind of find yourself into a whole heck of a lot of anarchy. And there's a lot of things I understand when people are worried about things with anarchy, like how would this work? How would that work? And I think ultimately a lot of those answers came to, I don't know, but I know that a politician does it worse. Mm-hmm. And I think that to me is kind of the best statement that I can make, because I can't think of any one subject that I would trust a politician more than the individual's families and friends, their societies, their cultures, and experts in the field to make. I trust that much more than a politician. And it's just, that's how I made the journey. I do a show called Enemy of My Enemy on We Are Libertarians. We're getting our own channel pretty soon, but right now we're just on the main show, and we have it's been a smashing success. Lots of downloads, lots of shares, lots of listeners. That show has a right, left, and a center libertarian on it, and we debate, of course, but we all talk about the things we can unify over. I love that we establish how we're different personally, but how we come together with our we make an alliance, and we just say, I understand you may want to live in a different society than I do someday, and that's fine. But until then, like, we're friends. We're in this till the end. We can't, if we separate all the libertarians out, we don't even have 3% of the country here. Yeah. There's no way no way without making some alliances and making a whole heck of a lot of converts that we're going to succeed. Basically, anytime somebody says, oh, don't recruit from the Republicans, don't recruit from the Democrats, they're too far gone, I'm just like, then you lose. Then we might as well not do politics at all and just goof around. We might as well just do what we want and accept our slavery, because there's no way we win without it. And that's me. That's it.
Oh, well, I love you. And that's part of why you're my friend. And I definitely agree. By the way, I do love your new show. I've listened to every episode so far, only a few. But I really enjoy the different points of view, and then the coming to understanding, because I think that's really difficult, especially for libertarians. It's a bunch of individualists that fight, and I just don't really care to do that. I would rather unite and bring other people in on the game of liberty. So tonight, and we'll plug a lot of your stuff, like let people know where they can find you at the end. But tonight we're going to talk about something. And here on Gingerarchy, I just have conversations. It's not super formal. You can cuss if you want, which I know you don't. We're gonna get a lot of hacks tonight. We're gonna get a lot of hacks and shocks tonight, people. But so there's a little bit of a phenomenon, I think, and I don't know if it's countrywide, but I know it's definitely due to the pandemic and in many certain ways. But it's the lack of employment in the service industry. And so I know that you worked in the service industry. If you could give us a little background in your service there.
Yeah, so I did graduate from college. I actually became a paramedic. Didn't like that. Graduated from college, got my degree in theology. Didn't really like. I liked being a student of religion. I didn't necessarily like teaching it as much, so I didn't do anything with that. I was in banking for a long time. I ended up working as a mortgage officer. So that was service as well, because I started off as a teller and sales and everything like that. And then got into the restaurant side. And that's where I spent a decade. That it's sad to add all these years up and hey, oh my gosh, before you know it, I'm 36 years old. But yeah, then I spent a decade in the restaurant industry. I started off just as a host at Applebee's. I worked up to serving. I worked up to management. I worked up to, kind of front of house management and kitchen management. I worked at Texas Roadhouse, Buffalo Wild Wings. I've actually worked on the corporate training for both of those places. We've opened stores in Seattle and Texas. And and so that's my experience with it's mostly food service, but there you go.
Oh, well, I have a similar experience. I've always had I've kind of ranged into my jobs as well, like gone to college, decided I didn't want that, did something else or whatever, but always on the side part-time for extra income. I worked in the food service industry. I worked in the service industry as well, but particularly as a bartender. So that was always a nice part-time extra income to whatever I was doing, because a lot of it is cash tips, and it's good money if you work really hard for a less amount of time than doing anything else. So I am an insurance agent. I particularly lost my job in the pandemic. And then when things started opening again, I needed something part-time. I was pregnant, had a different home life. So obviously I went back to bartending, and I noticed a lot of things. Number one, that there were no positions that weren't open. You could have anything if you're a service industry worker right now. But yes. I noticed that the turnover it's always been high in that industry, but it was particularly ridiculous. Also, I noticed that I wasn't making much money when I went back.
Yep.
And so I wanted to read something. I don't know if you know who Chrissy Wickers is. Do you know her?
Of course.
Yeah. So she posted something the other day, and I did ask her permission to read this, but it made a lot of sense to me. She's been in the service industry most of her life as well. She is a professional with a degree, and so she works a job in HR. But she posted this, and it really spoke to what I wanted to say. So I just want to start with this. So this is Chrissy's post. It was on social media, and these are her words. It's funny to watch people who likely have never been in the service industry nor done so in a pandemic bitch that former service employees don't want to go back to those jobs. They then assume it's because they're making so much more money on unemployment than they ever did working. Ha! I was a bartender for a decade, as many of you know. When DeWine shut my job down, who's our governor in Ohio, I was near graduation and thought, fuck it, I'll try to get unemployment until I get a job in the corporate world. First, it took 3 months to even get the unemployment. I can hear that. And I and my employers paid into. Second, we made $4 an hour. My unemployment was $115 a week before the extra $600. Even at $7.15 a week, that's what I made on a good Saturday night. Preach. Now, the extra is halved, and service industry folks are lucky to get $500 a week, which is literally federal poverty wages. I don't know a single person who'd rather make in a week what they did in a night or a weekend just so they don't have to work a 6-hour shift or two. Here's the actual issue. I went back to bartending for a couple months post-COVID before I graduated, and it's a vastly different world. I think on my best night, I made maybe $200. Restaurants aren't at full capacity, so the customer base is greatly diminished. They're all doing a record amount of carryout, which, if you've been in the service industry, you know is a fucking bitch and is likely a shared responsibility with a lot less tips to supplement that $4. People are extra Karen-y right now, and with that added carryout, Karens are waiting longer for their meals and somehow are more pissed off by their service existence than usual. So service workers are making a quarter of the money, doing the same if not more work for shittier customers. Who the fuck would want to do that? After a decade of prior work, I lasted only 2 months post-COVID before I said, fuck all this, I'm going to take an HR position. That's what thousands of people are doing. They're saying, fuck this shit, fuck these people, and fuck this restaurant, and getting jobs in other sectors, or taking classes to qualify them for any other job than the thankless bullshit they were willing to put up with when actual money was involved. Would you want to go back to your shitty job now that it's more difficult for less money? Hell no, because that's dumb as fuck. Instead of assuming people are lazy leeches making the big bucks in a system that's rigged against this industry, listen to them. Bartending is the hardest job I've ever had, and the only reason I stayed in was because counting those hundos at the end of the night was worth it. No one is going to do a job that shitty when those hundos turn into fives. And I quite agree and had a similar experience. So what do you say about that?
Boy, that is very spot on. So I guess that coincides with what happened to me. I got a job at writing about video games, which has been an absolute dream for me. I love writing. I really love video games. It's been fantastic. And I was going to keep my job. So after being done with restaurant management, I did end up working at Golden Corral, making tips there. I just worked as a regular server. Mm-hmm. And
which can be very lucrative. It can be very lucrative. Like
it's so lucrative. I have a tough time even putting into words how I think America is so well. You know what? I don't even say this. This isn't unique to America. The world is a cool place. Because one of the jobs that you can do without any training, without any education, heck, they want you to drop out of high school. If you've just bottomed out, is a job that makes more money than I made as a mortgage, professional.
I made more as a bartender than I ever did as an insurance agent. Low level, obviously, but yeah.
Sure. But it's pro stuff. It's just one of those things that isn't what people consider an entry level job. And if you feel like staying in that job for a while, that's a great baseline to have. If all else fails, I can do this. I can make a ton of money. That being said, I came back and I remember I was like, you know what, let me give it a couple weeks to see if I can balance this working at the restaurant and writing at the same time. And I believe after 3 days, I put in my 2 weeks notice. The new restrictions, absolutely crazy. And here's the thing about when you add new responsibilities, people say, well, just a couple of responsibilities. Well, the thing is especially big business, but every business wants to maximize your time on the clock so that you're not just sitting around and talking. Time enough to lean is time enough to clean, will say every manager ever at every restaurant, is you're always active. You're always doing something. I'm fine. If I'm there to work, I'm there to work. I understand that. But we were already working all the time anyway. So when they say, look, we're just going to throw a couple other things. First of all, the hosts at the front are no longer making drinks because of health stuff. Now, every single piece of silverware, when they get a new one, they can't reuse them. And you have to bring them a new one with every time they grab a meal. Now, if you're think about with me, this is a buffet, this is Golden Corral. And I have to, I have a section that incorporates 50 tables. Then it's okay, well, I have to pay attention. And every time one of those people gets up, I have to come back with a piece of silverware. You know what I mean? I can't just bring them there at the beginning. No plates available for the guests. The guests have to ask you for a plate every time. You're just getting hounded all the time. And these things, you barely I was running around and very busy before. Now I'm running around very busy again. But it's also true what Chrissy said. that there's not as many people. There's more carryouts. There's more people eating from home. Look, some of this is good. During the pandemic, people learned to cook for themselves. A lot of people liked it. A lot of people realized it's better. Here's the funny little study that people judge themselves when they cook and tend to like their own food more than restaurant food, but they don't know it. They just go to restaurant food and assume it's better psychologically. When in the blind taste test, they tend to select their own food more than restaurant food. People finally have grown accustomed to cooking for themselves, and they're like, you know what? Maybe I'm not so bad. So what happens? You eat your own food for like 6 months, and then you go out and it's like, who wants a cheeseburger from McDonald's? And you're like, dude, I can make a better cheeseburger than that in a couple seconds. Hang on. Like, I'm really good at this now. And that's a good thing. Like, more people are eating at home, and that's cool that people are aware of that. But, you know, it's less clientele. So what Chrissy said is absolutely right. Basically, it was triple the work for a third of the customers. Mm-hmm. And it's a ton of money, like I mentioned, but when you cut it into a third, you're making about minimum wage. And frankly, serving is a job for people that are big shots. It's a job for people that love to put in the extra and get a ton of money extra. Jamie and I mentioned we probably wouldn't serve for less than $20 an hour. And
I wouldn't bartend for less than 25. I wouldn't do it. Yeah. It's not worth it. It's the most thankless job, and you're in cardio, and you're dealing with horrible people, and you're lifting, and you're in the weeds the whole time. The only thing that's worth it is the fact that you have a tip jar.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's for people that push the limits on what they can make. You know, you have a good night. I mean, and we said we wouldn't do it for less than 20, but of course, you've worked bartending, so I'm sure you understand. Busy Saturday night, you can be looking at, you're looking at 3 digits every time, and sometimes that first digit starts with a 2 or a 3. Yeah, and it's like, man, definitely. You just made all that in one day. Yeah, 1 6-hour shift. Yeah, it's a tough shift, 6-hour shift. We did everything we could, and so the problem is it was already a position for go-getters. And what do you think happens to go-getters during when you lock down their businesses? Do you think they just shut down, do nothing, fall asleep?
Yeah. No, do you think they care about collecting lame unemployment at part of their actual wages instead of tips? They don't care about that. Right. They're finding gigs. They're hustling, Yep. And so, yeah. Yeah, Ohio has 5% unemployment right now. So that's not a horrible number. No. And yet we have no service workers. So I don't think it's because everybody's collecting unemployment. I think it's because the people that hustled decided it wasn't worth it to go back and found other positions. And I really get angry at people that are like, nobody wants to work and make my cheeseburger. It's like, then go make your cheeseburger. If you think you're entitled to a cheap burger, then maybe you think you're entitled to cheap labor. And if you want cheap labor, then go work it yourself, because that's not fair. So I think it's a real good study in market economics.
Yeah, I mean, and in monetary theory as well. I mean, I think, one of the issues here is now people and you know what, the government giving out money did not help.
No, it did not. And I want to.
And so, it didn't help. And so what happens is you inflate the, monetary theory. When you have more money in the system, the prices increase. I mean, this happens every time. This isn't a surprise. And so when we have more money in the system, and there's no labor generating it, it's just printed money. It's just more money in the system. So prices increase on everything. Mm-hmm. Right, yeah. And so when somebody says, hey, want to come back for $7 an hour? Well, $7 an hour is no longer worth $7 an hour. Mm-hmm. $7 an hour is now worth what $3 an hour was before, $4, $5. I guess I don't want to exaggerate. If I'm to use the exact percentage, we printed off about 10% of it. So yeah, I mean, 10, 15% of our total monetary supply is printed out. And so all of a sudden that job is worth 10 to 15% less.
Yeah, but then also take into account the other factors, that there's less customer base. And if you're working in a commission-based system like tips, then that's even lower. So it's just even worse, Oh,
absolutely. Yeah. So these places, the same money before is not worth the same money now. And so when you have a bunch of hustlers, and like you said, we're talking about people in the service industry. These are a lot of hustlers. When you've got all these hustlers and you've given them time to improve themselves and time to look at their business and say like, all right, that stuff, what I was making before is now worth 10 to 15% less. I'll bet I can do better. And they went and did better. Like you mentioned, unemployment as a rate actually isn't that bad right now. So
Right.
what happened? Well, they got different jobs. This situation that we're in with the service industry isn't going to change. What's going to have to change is people are going to have to pay their workers more. They're going to have to offer more benefits, and they're going to have to, they're going to have to increase their prices, because that's what happens when you pay your
Yeah.
workers more. And
Because
everybody's going to have to do
it
it.
always comes down to the consumer, and that's
Yep.
what really sucks about it. But at the same time, I would say, like, to a lot of employers, like, I just look at anecdotal things locally, and I would say that maybe if you're working in food industry, maybe offer your employees a free meal. I think it's really disgusting when employers don't do that. Maybe offer them a week paid vacation. Like, things like that might keep them from somebody paying them a dollar more an hour. If you're a better employer and you treat your employees better and give them maybe not necessarily monetary benefits, but a better workplace and benefits, they'll stay. So I do think that that's a good correction in the market. However, I know that what the government has done has completely perverted it. So I kind of bounce between the two. I don't want to say, well, people aren't willing to work, because that's not true. I see the unemployment rate. I know that's not true. But also, it's just like, maybe be a better employer and you can draw people into your industry. What do you think about that?
Sure. So, right now, as a restaurant, you've got to compete with other restaurants. And since they're going through the same thing, they all need to be aware, hey, look, we've even seen heck, they're posting it on their signs where usually it's like 2-for-1 tacos. They're like, hey,
Yeah.
you show up for an interview and we'll give you $50.
Yeah, hey, I'm not hating that. I'm not hating it at
Hey,
all.
that's even better than 2-for-1 tacos. All right, let's do this. Pretty good. So look, everybody's going through it. Everybody's kind of on look, let's be honest, bigger business is always going to be on a higher playing field, but most of them are on at least the same-ish playing field. And so you say, yeah, we're going to have to do some things differently. What you mentioned with, sometimes it's not just monetary. Offering your employees free, just any kind of recognition, especially in the service industry. Because I think we get our tips, and that's great. It's great to be recognized from our guests. We want to be recognized from our bosses too. I love my job because when I write a bunch of articles that get a lot of traffic, I will have one of my editors come and be like, man, you're killing it right now. And that is worth hundreds of dollars to people, because you just want that affirmation. We are all human beings here. I know we're talking about economics, but we all still want to be affirmed. Right?
Well, that's praxology, really.
Right.
How do humans work? And so, if you work well for humans and make yourself desirable, they're going to move towards you. That's just human nature. So a lot of people think, how could small business compete? And I think they can. I personally would rather work for a small business. I always have. I've worked for a corporation once in my life, hated the experience, got paid horribly, and left with a little bit of knowledge, but thinking I don't ever want to do that again. And so I would definitely work for a little bit of a lower wage if the job was better. You know what I mean? Like, what is my sanity? What is my mental health worth? So I think that's important. What's funny is you mentioned like $50 for an interview. I know Waffle House, which I love. I'm a member of the Libertarian Party Waffle House caucus, and I'm a proud member.
I believe I am as well.
Oh, they're offering a $500 sign-on bonus to their cooks, their line cooks. I think that's amazing.
That's awesome. And honestly, and see, here's what's happening. People know that. People are going to the Waffle House caucus. What do the other restaurants want to do? What they're going to do is run a smear campaign and just be like, look at all these lazy workers that don't want to work. They're hustlers. They got offered $500 somewhere else. What are you going to do? You can't just smear your potential workers to be like, look at how many lazy people are out there. That's not a good motivator. If you treat people like that publicly, what do you think you're going to get treated like when you work there?
Yeah.
It's just the same deal.
$500 hiring somebody is so much cheaper than turnover and retraining too. Like, it's just, it makes economical sense too. So I do want to go to that point, because you and I, Hodey Johns, are the last two true nuanced anarcho-capitalists in the universe. Is that not
That's
true?
accurate. Yep.
It's completely
Nobody else
accurate.
gets it.
Nobody
else gets it.
Don't argue. Please leave. But I wanted to talk a little bit about economics of that, because I feel like a lot of people aren't grasping that with the lack of people wanting to go back into the service industry. And I do think that the government and inflation has had a lot to do with that. But at the same time, I do think it's a good lesson in market economics, because a lot of people think that that favors the rich, and it actually just favors a business. And a business is anybody who works. So you're your own business and you can market yourself to anybody else. And so if you have a much more economic teeth than I do. So if you could explain to people like what, a free market economy would mean to service employees or anybody like that, especially in this environment, that would be awesome.
Sure. So I don't want to give anybody the impression that I've gotten like a master's or anything. I got passionate about economics like 2 or 3 years ago. Because for a long time,
you have an honorary PhD in the gingerarchy school of thought.
That's right.
Take that for what it's worth, and that is nothing.
It's worth something with you. So, hey. Yeah, constant back scratches. So that's why we spend all our time together. Because, we're the last two that are graduates alive. Anyway, so what I did is I actually I read a book. I absolutely found it fascinating because I thought economics was money, and economics is actually the distribution of resources. Money is a lot of times part of that, but it's so much bigger than just that, and it's so much easier to explain when you just think about it as stuff. How does stuff really? If I boil it down, get rid of all the complicated words. It's just how stuff is distributed and how stuff should be distributed. And so what we do is we have certain things and we say, and economists from Karl Marx to Adam Smith to Murray Rothbard to Paul Krugman, what's funny is most of them actually have an agreement about how economics works. And they say, if I do this will probably be the next effect. Sometimes they disagree, but a lot of times they just say, but this is it. And so a lot of economics, and the reason libertarians deal with it a lot, is it becomes a question of ethics. We know what it will do because we have tons and tons and tons and tons of examples. But is this what it should do? Is this the right thing to do? So, like, one of the things that has always bugged me about Karl Marx, and hey, I'm cool. If you're a libertarian socialist, that's a real thing. Our founding comes from libertarian socialism. It's cool. I get it. But Karl Marx specifically was kind of like, oh, yeah, if we do this, they'll end up murdering a lot of people that they don't want to give money to, or that they don't want to give food to. I'm cool with that. I was like, okay, well, the difference is the capitalists were not cool with that.
Yeah.
And it's not that they disagree. But I bring that up to say that there was an agreement on what would happen. The disagreement is in ethics. So really, it's funny because when you have a debate about economy with people that kind of are an entry level, usually it's a matter of if it'll work or not. When in reality, there's very little disagreement on if it'll work or not. It's a matter of if it's ethical or not. So, as far as what free markets,
I'm going to quote you on that, Hodey. That's a very astute point, and
thank you.
It's true though.
Right, and so what it is I challenged myself after reading one book. I was like, I want to read from every economic school there is, and there's a lot. And I think Wikipedia recognized like 32. And I was like, I'm going to read one from each of these 32 economic schools of thought because I just find them so fascinating. And I read one book on each, and I kept
reading. Side note, what do you think about the Chicago school?
The which one?
Chicago.
Oh, yeah. So, the Chicago school
is my second favorite.
Yeah. And the reason they're close, Thomas Sowell is kind of like the big dog for me. And when the dude writes about economy, Thomas Sowell is such a beast. Yeah. Basic Economics, it's a book everybody should read. It is so dope. There is a lot of corporate protectionism in the Chicago school, a lot of centralized currency, a little bit in the economic school of Chicago. But if you do deal with like, hey, let's just say we're all dealing with the American dollar and that's just the way it's going to be. It's got the best advice. I find the Chicago school to be a lot more applicable than the Austrian school a lot because we assume that we're dealing with the American dollar. Right now, because we have to deal with the American dollar, it makes the most sense. I think anarcho-capitalism is a great. The Austrian school is a very good like dream, like ideal.
Yeah.
But I think the Chicago school is certainly like, hey, if we're going to operate in this system, here's the best way to operate the system.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't dislike the Chicago school just because I find it's one for people that are very concrete, and they're like, well, we're not overthrowing the system. So what do we do? Practically speaking.
It's not a dream. It's the best reality we can have.
Correct.
Yeah. But I still am an Austrian fan.
Right. Yeah. And you know what? Like, here's the thing. Like, respect to the people in Chicago, because I mean, the reason the Austrians. It's funny because there was a fight within the Libertarian Party that actually tore the party apart a long time ago between the Austrians and the Chicagoans.
Was that like the early 80s?
Something like that. It was before I was born. But I had to read
like
about it.
Rothbard and the Randians and the...
Yes. Yep, all that. And it's funny because, like, nowadays, most people don't know the difference between Chicago and Austrian school. And it just shows how the times have changed. You know, like they're so close that people are like, same difference. You know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's how far we are from actual economics.
Right. We're pretty distant from it. Yeah. Well, and in truth, some of it's good. I mean, we shouldn't be fighting about it as much as we are.
We should completely fight about Keynesian economics. We should completely reject
Keynesianism is awful.
Keynes is a ridiculous person. It should be eaten.
Keynes inspired Nazism, and that inspired everything else. That's all you need to know about Keynes. So that there you go. If you want to know the economics of Nazis, that's Keynes, and then for some reason the rest of the world decided to copy him. No, none of that for me, thank you. If you're anti-fascist, you must absolutely reject the Keynesian economic system,
which is really funny because people antiquate or associate Antifa with, you know, that type of thing, and it's like those are diametrically opposed. Like that's not fascists agree with that. So if you're anti-fascist, you shouldn't be that way. But I guess it all gets muddled because nobody understands anything worth anything anymore.
Sure. Well, and you know, like I don't want to begrudge people that don't understand, because in truth, I think the way economics should work. We talk about a preferred system. I think everybody should be allowed to try, as long as there's not the use of coercive force. Try your system out. If you
right,
say,
but some systems require it, and that's a problem.
Right, and yes, that's where you get the issue of, if you're a voluntary communist, have at, man. We are best friends.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's have a good time together. I absolutely do not want to live on a commune, but you know what? You have yourself a time, and I'm not going to be, I don't even be disparaging about it. I truly believe some people would flourish best on a commune, and they should be allowed to.
I do live in very small factions. I don't believe it's meant for a large population. But I'll trade with you. Ginger and Capistan will trade with your little commune all day long. I probably will draw people into Ginger and Capistan, but that's fine. I'm not going to take them by force.
Well, not to be technical, but as soon as you've traded with a commune, it's no longer a commune. But
well, they'll have to if they want better resources. But you know, that's just a lesson in economics, and we're not going to go into what ifs. Right. Because we're living in, and we're talking about what's happened to the service industry. And here we are, Hodey, two caps going off into economics.
Well, I mean, it's an excitable issue. I have a tough time thinking that anybody has read like basic economics and not gotten excited to discuss it, because the ideas are so provocative. They're so cool.
They are. And I'm not a big bookworm, and I actually really enjoy them. I can't lie and say that I listened to Human Action and enjoyed all of it. But I did take a lot away from it. You know what I mean? So, you know, it was really, really fucking hard.
Yeah, you know, I do recommend starting with basic economics, just because it's a book that was actually made without graphs, without pictures like that. It's like a perfect audiobook. It's like, look, I'm boiling this down as basic as I can. So if there's any economic discussion that comes up, you can be a part of it and you're competent. And I think it's a great introduction. And it gets you kind of involved and excited about everything else. Because, I think I started trying to read like Man, Economy, and State. And I was like, dude, put a bullet in my brain.
God, I read that night. Honestly, I'm going to be honest here. And I'm honest with my listeners. I don't remember most of it because I couldn't keep with it. It bored me. It wasn't that I didn't understand the ideas. It bored me.
Well, I think, and this is a problem with a lot of capitalists, including like my man, Adam Smith, who I love. but they become so enamored with the data and with studying that
and with their own voices.
Right. So to say a simple sentence like, they take the Jacques Cousteau, castaway example and say, I found, I let's say there's 3 of us on this island and there are 6, apple trees. Is it better for one of us to have all the apple trees and then trade with somebody who's harvesting all the salt? Or is it better for each of us to have 2? And so what they'll do is they'll break down and conduct these experiments. And I'm like, can you just get to the end of this experiment, please? Like, I'm dying over here. Like,
that's me. I'm laying on the floor looking for memes because I'm done.
Right. And they're like, well, okay, so here's what happened. Let me explain why. I'm like, you don't need to explain why. Just tell me what, like, I'm so good to go, man. Like, you just tell me what happened. We can move on. Anyway, what would free market economy do for the service industry? Well, so the first and foremost important thing to remember about free market systems, without a coercive government, there is no such thing as a set wage. What you get, that is something that is called
the minimum wage is 0.
Minimum wage is 0. So do you get your wage? No. What do you get when you work in a free market economy? What you get is what the majority of the workers will want. And what they want is a share of the profits. And so what you get is a share of the profits. Now, what people want, and that's what people generally want. Now, this still, being capitalists, it's not that we're sharing it all equally. It's not like, hey, McDonald's has 5 million employees and we made $50 million. Here's,
right,
whatever amount of money for each of them. That's not what we're talking about here. This is based on the amount of work you do, the amount of, things like risk factor are included, things like work ethic and all that. But ultimately, your production is in your control. As opposed to saying like, well, I sold this, and I worked this long, so I get $8 an hour. It's I worked this long and I put in this amount of effort in this line of work, and I get X% of this company's profits. That is a colossal. It was something that Adam Smith noticed about free market systems, or at least freer market system. Because there's no true capitalist utopia.
No,
there probably hasn't ever been. There hasn't been ever true communism, true whatever. But we can't look at like the percentage of trueness, I guess, to say how much of this was capitalist.
Right, because we live on Earth and none of that actually exists in pure form.
Right, yeah. And so when people are like, it's not real. Well, it's never going to be real. Let's stop looking at it that way. Let's look at how much of it was there. And so when Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, one of his big things was saying, when he wrote, the reason it's even called Wealth of Nations is he was looking for what made them the most prosperous. What made your general person the most prosperous? What was the policies that they had? What were the systems going on? And he found that the systems that did not designate wages, the people were forced to divvy up their profits. And dividing profits yields a lot more prosperity than dividing a certain wage. Because wages have 2 problems with them. One, if they don't recognize the difference of the type of work you're doing or how long, they recognize length of work. They don't recognize effectiveness of work.
Yeah.
If I'm a painter and I have a canvas and I mess up the canvas, I've actually taken down the overall economic value of society, because that blank canvas was worth something and now it's worth nothing because I got my paint on. Versus, and I could spend 12 hours doing that. Do I deserve the same amount of money doing that as somebody who spends 12 hours making a masterpiece? Of course not. And so there is still different various wages. But the thing is the profit from that is owned by the workers. And so you should, as a worker, be able to say, listen, I know I sold that, I made that piece, I sold that piece, I might have worked with you to do it. You might be my seller, but you get your share for selling it, and I get my share for the profits. And that is kind of a lot of it. And I think when you look at the service industry, the market values service so much more than these little pittance wages that you get. Usually what you're getting is fractions. I mean, and we've known this for a long time. When they show those graphs about the wealthy getting wealthier and these mega corporations getting even more mega, and you just say, well, we know at one time they were able to afford giving their workers 90% of their profits. And now they're able to give their workers 50%, 40% of
Right.
their profits, 30%. We just see that downward climb. We know it's possible, but what enables it is a wage. It's that simple, because what happens is your wage is flat, and the amount of money that enters the system, Trisha, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is not flat.
No.
That is a huge number.
No, and any decent business person that knows somebody is worth their value will pay them more because they're making them more. It's just natural, but it's not natural in a wage system. It's you know what I mean? You would want to pay the producers more and pay the non-producers less or fire them, but that's not natural. You have to pay everybody that wage, and it goes against free market principles. It really does.
Yeah, well, and so the free market is the reason people talk about praxeology a lot is this: it's human action. What do humans do in this insulatory system? So we talk about spontaneous order. What do they set up? Generally, what they agree on is this share of the profits. And here's what else it does. Let me throw this out there too. One of the reasons it tends to be more profitable is because then the workers are actively invested in making more profits for the entire company. It creates a natural cooperation, because if we say, hey, I'm making more money, if everybody's making more money, then I'm going to work harder, then I'm going to work better, then I'm going to be more efficient. I want this company to succeed. And therefore, I want, to get bigger profits, I'm going to have to do better work. And so everybody's doing better work. Then suddenly, think about accountability, especially in the service industry. Everybody's worked with somebody who's a goof off, who doesn't do anything, who says, hey, it doesn't matter. They're used to waiting 15 minutes on bar drinks anyway.
They ride on everybody else's work.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that person either has to step up or step out, because they say, hey, you're a liability. Suddenly it's not your boss that has to say, I don't want you here. It's the coworkers. And the coworkers, you're looking at their profits. And so they can say, I'm not going to work there if they're not working. If they're working, they need to step up. They need to work harder. Then all of a sudden the employees hold each other accountable. And instead of having this very vertical, hierarchy chart, you get a little more horizontal with it, right? You get more employee to employee accountability. Countries that, let me use a sports example here. Two different ideas behind sports and steroid usage.
Sports balls.
You know
sports how much I love sports balls, Hodey. I'm a big sports ball fan. Yay, team.
Yay, team. So in America, if you're on a team sport and you use steroids and you get caught doing it, you'll get suspended, you'll get fined, something like that. In other countries, if you get caught using it, they'll not only fine you, but they'll fine the team. And if you've won any medals, championships, whatever during that time, they'll strip you of your medals and championships. Yeah. So in those environments, what happens in America is pretty much everybody's doing steroids but getting away with it. In those other locations, the teams enforce themselves because they say, we do not want to lose our championship. So all of a sudden, instead of the NFL commissioner's office coming down, doing drug tests, figuring everything out, these teams are policing themselves. And this is kind of similar to the free market system, because what we need to say, like, look, what works best, we need to make the most money we can here. We're going to police ourselves to make sure that we are making the maximum bank that we can. And that would be so awesome. Look, service, it was in a great place. It is not in a good place right now.
No, it is.
It might get to a better place eventually. But it would be in the very best place in a free market system.
It would. And I know that definitely with free money and stimulus, we've, obviously inflating. So $8.70 an hour in Ohio doesn't mean what it meant, a year ago. But at the same time, I really dislike people that don't understand the economy and don't understand that those people don't need to work for really small wages because you want them to. It's actually like they're in demand now, so they get to demand more. Like, that's how the market works. It's really puzzling to me. I live in a very conservative town, and people are just bitching about people not working at Burger King or not wanting to serve them their, double Whopper for $8.20 an hour. And I'm like, do you understand what it's like to work for you? I wouldn't do it. If you are so upset about it, then come out of retirement and go work for $8.80 an hour and make Whoppers all day. Like, I don't think they understand the market system too. So there's a lot of things in play. I mean, obviously the unemployment didn't help. But also, I do think there's just a lot of people, especially with our low unemployment rate here in Ohio, decided to seek out other gigs and they're in it and they're not going back to being treated like shit. Like they're just not. And so these employers are going to need to pay more, which sucks because it's going to, the cost always goes to the consumer. And so we're going to paying a lot for our fast food or whatever. Luckily, I don't eat a lot of that. So, but,
Right.
I would
and we had a stereotype about these people, right? Which was that, oh, this is your lazy. Oh, hey, how are you doing? I'm an idiot. Like we act like, oh goodness, I just want to make sure everything's taken care of, folks. I'm just a drink monkey. I go back and forth and grab your stupid drinks, and I don't know. I don't deserve anything that I'm getting. When in reality, it's hard work for people like us. I'm a college graduate. I went back to serving after working in restaurant management I guess I was in it for about 6 years. But I went back to serving. Right.
Yeah, it was harder. It was harder than all those jobs. Way harder.
Right. It's harder. And here's the thing. All that like kind of what people would say is like, oh, what, they're just some dummy that dropped out of high school. Now, maybe some of them are, but they aren't dummies. Right. And they can't, unfortunately, you gave them time to value themselves, to sit down, to reevaluate things and say like, I deserve better. I'm a hustler. I'm good at this. Yeah. This was literally my cover letter to my job, because they wanted me to send in an application with a cover letter. And I was like, man, because I have no experience. And I was like, look, I got no experience, but I really love this job. I will work for you for free. And if after 2 weeks, you don't think I'm worth the value, you can send me on my way. Mm-hmm. And they're like, dang, this kid's got it. They hired me right away. They didn't take me up on the offer or anything. But they're just like, wow, like that made up for all the experience that I didn't have. Mm-hmm. And so what you're finding is a lot of these servers that society treated like they were stupid, right? That they were adults, that they were entry-level jobs, that they were just, that this is for the bottom. And yes, the bottom crust of society can get this job, but they can't make it work unless they're hustling.
They can't keep it. It doesn't take a genius, but it takes a certain type of person. It really does.
Yeah, exactly. So what it is it's all the hustlers, and you gave them a chance to hustle, and and that's the thing. I knew that it was all just a stereotype, and that very little of it was true. We had a bunch of people working their way through college. We had a bunch of people who graduated college, and those were the people who were generally in the restaurant industry and doing successful. And so all they did was say, you know what? People are finding out now that was a stereotype. They thought the servers were sitting around, and they would have been the most happy people on earth to sit around and grab free money. And so now, hey, we stopped giving out free money. And what happened? Oh, they all found lines of work that valued their hustle better.
Yeah.
And so it's like, look, if you want those hustlers back, you are going to have to work for them.
Yep. And that's called a free market. Well, semi-free. I do know, I understand a little bit of the inflation, but honestly, like, if you want good employees, you have to pay them. I don't understand why you would think somebody would do something you wouldn't want to do for less than you would do. That doesn't make any logical sense to me. If you're not willing to do that job for $8.70 an hour, why would you expect somebody else? Do you think that they're your slave? Because it doesn't make sense to me. But also, I want to point on a lot of this falls at the feet of the government as well. Obviously, not just the employers. I mean, they really got screwed. So you have occupancy. So, I went back to bartending because I lost my job in insurance. And what happened to me, actually, I got overwhelmed because we didn't have enough tables. We had to take out tables. So I had the whole pub side and my bar, which was huge. But we didn't have enough tables to justify a server, so I just did the whole thing myself. Well, when you're serving 100 people with one person, you just can't get the service you can. It was either that or you divide it and then you each get your pay cut like in half of what it would have been. So I think a lot of this falls on a lot of governors that have done these occupancy standards. And it's like, for fuck's sake, it's not making anybody healthier. It's not stopping the spread of COVID. Let these businesses thrive and live off they're living on margins as thin as ice right now. It's ridiculous. I can't understand why you wouldn't just say you can have this many people and it doesn't matter. If people gather together now, you know what? Let them be damned. Like
Yeah.
let the restaurant owners thrive and let them exceed, their potential and let them sell and pay their employees.
If
It
you're
makes me
eating
really angry.
if you're eating from the chocolate fountain in the middle of the pandemic, you know what you're doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I get like maybe some employers would still cater to maybe like compromised or older people and want to do that, and that's fine. If they want to find a way to make a profit doing that, that's okay. But if I have a pub that wants to do karaoke again, and a bunch of 30-year-old healthy people want to come sing karaoke, who the fuck is the government to say that that's not okay? It's not their damn business.
So let me put on my statist hat for a moment, because this is
Jesus, Hodey.
This is one of my favorite experiments, and one of the things that kind of shows. I think it shows status a lot, because let's pretend I'm just a really benevolent government dictator. I'm the governor of some.
No, that's a paradox. But okay,
Well,
I will play along.
Right. Well, I said imagination. We're gonna have to pretend. Right? We're pretending.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we're playing pretend. So here's what I'm going to do. I want to keep the maximum amount of people alive and still keep the economy going.
Okay.
And a pandemic hits. What would I do? Would I close everything down and just said, I had to choose between the economy and lives, and I chose lives, and so now everybody's stuck in their homes, and I'm going to destroy the economy, even though the economy is also people's lives, and so by destroying the economy, I destroyed people's lives down the road. Okay.
Right.
Long story short, any withdrawals we do now, your kids are going to be working longer, harder hours for less money to pay for it. That's just flat out what it is.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not going to do that because, as I mentioned, I'm a benevolent dictator. What would I do if I had an ounce of common sense, but I still wanted to flex my statism? Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, if you're immunocompromised, stay home, and I will give you money. Let's take all the people that are at risk, all of them. 100% of the people that feel at risk, they can sign themselves up. Let's say I don't want anybody to dictate and tell them their immune system is compromised. You decide. You can sign up for this. We'll pay you money to stay home, whatever you made before, and we're going to work on a system that brings you groceries, brings you food, does it in a contact-free way, and then we can keep the economy going while still saving literally every single life that wants to be saved. This is the problem with government. They don't do that. What did they do? They shut everything down. They killed a ton of people in the long runs. Ask Andrew Cuomo, they killed a lot of people in the short run too.
Yeah. Well, he literally is responsible for he did what would be worst for immunocompromised people and pushed people that had COVID into nursing homes. That's literally the worst thing you could have done, and he did it. So yeah.
Right. And so the thing is this is now Cuomo is a particularly bad example because I'm not sure how many governors.
Human garbage. Okay, let's move on from that.
Right. He makes the top 5 of politicians I can't stand, which is let me tell you, that's a tough list to get onto.
I know, I got a big fucking list.
But he's on there. But even then, every state kind of did this thing where they're like, all right, well, we had to flex our chops, and so we decided what businesses should get shut down. As opposed to doing, look, what do you do with a quarantine? You lock down the people that are in danger. You don't lock down
quarantine is for sick people, not for healthy people. And I would say people that are in high risk of being sick from this. Yeah.
Right. And so the thing is were there precautions that would have made sense? I'm not a denier. Yeah. There are absolutely some things we should have done that would have made sense.
I would say there were a lot of voluntary solutions that the government could have suggested and not enforced. Absolutely. Correct. And I think businesses would have, because if it makes sense for your bottom line, you're going to do it. You're not going to put your customers at risk if it doesn't it doesn't make any logical sense. Yeah.
Cruise ships, the NCAA, sports events, they were all shutting down before the lockdowns were in place. Right. Because they're like, oh man, we're going to get all the people sick. We don't want to do that.
They were trying to preventive, cut it off, and then eventually they could come back to their business. Yeah.
Right. And so I think what it is when we get a grasp on it, I'm really inspired by the Magic Johnson. Right. Here's some more sports ball for you. I know you're loving this right now, Trishee. But gets AIDS, and there's this there's so many. There's people who say AIDS is nothing. There's people who say AIDS is the end of the world. And what it is it was right somewhere in between. And they're like, okay, so what is AIDS? Okay, if he gets a cut, we have to treat it. Let's know that. Does it mean he can't play basketball every day? No, it doesn't. And so what it is a lot of people there was so much hysteria during the Magic Johnson times because everybody's like, oh my gosh, they're going to breathe the same air as him. They're going to get AIDS. And you think of, we still have laws in states that haven't been revoked yet because politicians are lazy. I know this is a shocker, but where you can't have, AIDS patients share the same, room with another patient because they breathe the same air. But it's like, that's not how AIDS
There's still state laws against sodomy, which just blows my mind. And I haven't saying I'm for or against. I'm just saying, what does that have to
why is this your deal?
Like, I don't care.
Right, yeah, do what you want. It's a goofy thing. So the thing is with this is it's like, is there something we should have done? There's a common sense threshold. If you were immunocompromised, this was absolutely a very serious thing. You should have stayed home. We should have altered our economy to make sure that you're well fed, that you're supplied, that your bills are paid. Absolutely. All these things we should take care of. That's a compassionate solution. The uncompassionate solution is to shut down every single, restaurant or put restrictions on them that are so audacious that they can't open. Right. This is the Atlas Shrugged Dagny Taggart bit.
Are you there?
I think we got DC'd for a second.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So this is what we did was the Atlas Shrugged thing, which is saying, I don't want to ban your business, but what I am going to do is I'm going to make it impossible for your business to operate by making things so regulated that you pretty much have to shut down. Right. And so this is the problem that we have. So go ahead. Nice to hear. Hello.
What? Hodey?
Hello?
Did you hit the question? Hey,
I haven't hit anything. Oh, hey, why?
Okay. I don't know. All weird. I don't think I can edit this because it's in the middle of the show. So if you're listening to Gingerarchy, hey, it's fine.
Hey, this is weird things happening. Yeah. Did you hear my thing about Atlas Shrugged?
I definitely did, which, I'm a huge fan, so I definitely heard. My ears perked up. So do you want to take a question?
Yeah, let's do it.
This could be really bad. So I'm just warning you ahead of time.
Let's have it be bad. Give me the bad stuff.
All right. We got Ryan Elias here asking a question.
Boo.
Well, boo yourself.
Yes. Thank you. I told you it could be bad. Me and Chris do these, and there was one guy, we're having a really good conversation about fourth wave feminism. And I really did a lot of research for this episode, and the guy just farted. But anyways, here's the next question.
Oh, bro, I'm actually sorry about the last one. I didn't mean to do it. That was just me being dumb.
Well, I appreciate the apology. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. We appreciate you. I hope that you're finding employment, and if you're a server, you're going to fight for your rights. Anyways. Okay. So yeah, we've kind of touched on, it's kind of all over the map, but I wanted it to be because I think that a lot of people don't understand the economics behind what's happening right now. But so for the people that say it's purely the government's fault and it's purely this extended unemployment in addition and this upcoming UBI, basically, what would you say to that? Is there any truth to that?
No. So one of the problems is when you blame 100% of everything on the government, you abdicate the responsibility that you have yourself. I don't believe that God would create a world in which there is evil if we weren't meant to contend with that evil. And so there are always going to be problems, and we need to always be offering solutions, fair or not. Mm-hmm. Maybe we shouldn't have to be compensating for the government, but you know what? We have to. And this is what it is. And so we mentioned before, one Waffle House has found a solution. Yes, it involves paying their workers more money. Yeah, that happens. It's going to involve raising the prices on the menu. That too. So the thing is these things are going to have to happen. If they refuse, if they say, no, we want to keep our employee wages the same, we want to keep the prices the same, they failed to compensate for what the government has done. Yes, it is the government's fault for shutting everything down and for pumping a bunch of money into the system and wrecking a bunch of things. That being said, you can do wrong when wrong has been done to you still, right? So we have been wronged by the government. They are the cause, and we can respond incorrectly. And so the thing is there's a correct way to respond for this, and paying your workers fairly and being good to them and recognizing their merits and their value and their hustle is all very important. And the companies that don't do that deserve to suffer, maybe not because of the government stuff, but they deserve to suffer for not treating their employees better. This is the system we have. You need to work with it and be better.
I love your answer because I wholeheartedly agree. And yes, maybe business owners, especially small business, we're put in a really tough position immediately. And, but you can't fight an ill done to you with an ill done to other people. And so I think this might be a day of reckoning where people need to pay service industry workers better. And ultimately, you'll get better employees. If you want to keep paying people crap wages, they're going to get crap employees. You might get somebody, you don't have to retrain people every 3 months if you get somebody and pay them decent. So it could benefit businesses in the long run. I don't understand why people think people are replaceable. When you retrain somebody, it costs a lot of time and money. Anybody that's ever worked in service knows that. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. And so I do want to kind of dispel the myth that it's all laziness of people just collecting unemployment, because trust me, I got 2 weeks of it and it sucked.
Right.
And most people want to work, to be honest. And we have actually a pretty low unemployment rate here in Ohio. So I know that's true. But
I'm a living example. I went and I got my dream job. That's you know what? if my restaurant wanted me back for my dream job, yeah, there's a price. It's pretty high. So we'll see. Well,
I'm just part-time when needed now. So if somebody calls off or whatever, if I'm available, I'll work. So I didn't quit, but I basically did to try to work from home because it's a lot easier. I don't have to pay childcare, and I can try to hustle for myself, and I don't have to deal with people that are angry all the time. So it's a lot better gig for me. But I still have love for the job. There's still something about being, in a restaurant on a Friday night and hustling and making big bucks and stuff. That's fun. And I hope it'll go back to that eventually. But final words on what's happening. And I like the fact that we focused on the service industry. I think so many people overlook it like it's not a real job. I really hate that. So what would you say to a business owner that's struggling right now to employ people?
Oh, first of all, I'm sorry. Owning a business is 10% your passion and 90% dealing with bullcrap. And so I am sorry. I'm sorry ahead of time because I believe in that passion. I've seen people's passions die because of this. And in truth, in a free market, your job should be 100% about your passion and 0% about the bullcrap. So it's just, I get it. First of all, so I guess I want to lead with that. I'm sorry. That's hard. Secondly, here's what I want to do. I want to throw out a couple of lessons for you. What I had is I took some awesome management classes from a guy named Kent Taylor. He was the CEO of Texas Roadhouse. He actually donated his salary so that people wouldn't get fired. Kent, man, hard story. Kent.
Yeah, I know you were dealing with this recently. Didn't he pass away?
Yeah. So he got COVID. He had ringing in his ears, and one of the lesser known side effects is if you have that, it can get really bad, and it just got really loud. Unfortunately, he committed suicide. And I had pictures with him. I have some really great experiences with him. He's one of the few good dudes in the corporate world, and there's a lot of butt munches on top of, I think, restaurants, the immediate ones. You can find a lot of good people. I think when you start to climb the ladder, you kind of get some gross people, but he was one of the good ones. Yeah. And so that was tough. But I did this leadership seminar when I worked with them, and it was cool. We went out to it was crazy. We went out to the Kentucky Derby. And I just met a whole bunch of motivational speakers and inspirational speakers. We read some books. about leadership and that really helped me out. And one of the things that I really wanted to point out was just how much recognition means, because people can live a life in America making about any wage at all. And so one way you combat it, we've been talking about wages a lot, but I want to stress, especially with service people, I am cool to make $0 an hour plus tips because I'm really good at making those tips. And so,
Same.
like, as long as the tips are there, oh, heck yeah. I mean, hey, we work at Uncle Sam takes everything else. We don't make paychecks. I get a $0.
Right.
It's funny because they'll give you this $0
Those are the worst,
paycheck
aren't they?
every 2 weeks. And you're
It's
like,
like
what is this?
$14 for 2 weeks.
Right. And it's like, this is saying that we paid you $2 an hour and the government got literally every single last cent of it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, thanks for this. You know, and so like, I don't care about that part. That part means nothing to me. What means everything to me is the tip. So if your customers are paying the tips, then you don't really have a lot in terms of wages to boost people up. So instead of looking for something financial, think of something cheap that you can do that gives your employees recognition. One of the things that we had is we had a whiteboard in the back, and I had a contest for people every day. And I'd look at the stakes that weren't going to make it till tomorrow. And I'd be like, all right, here's the deal. You sell one of these, you know, you get a point. Whoever gets the most points at the end of the day gets their name on the board. They get recognition. My boss looks at this. Your boss's boss looks at this. They will see your name. You will get praise. You will get recognition. And so people would compete over it. I would take like a 50-cent Hershey's to the board and be like, the winner gets this Hershey's. Look, it's not about the Hershey's. It's about getting the name on the board and getting that recognition. And I would just say, you can think about the things that are free that you can immediately improve people's quality of life with. Because the reason I bring up being able to live anywhere in America on about any salary is because, some places are going to be harder than others. But we know minimum wage people that live in the thick of San Francisco. It's possible. It's this, it's not likely.
Really hard work. Yeah.
Right. People will say, look, I don't need to take as many vacations if my job feels better to be at. I don't feel like I need a vacation constantly. So you know what? I don't need more money because I love my job and I feel good working here. I would say if you have an atmosphere where people do not like their jobs, that is the most important thing to fix. I would be flat out and say, look, if you're here, we're being positive and not being positive like I'm giving you a bunch of bad stuff to deal with and you guys keep a smile on your face. I'm saying give people a reason to smile, to dance, to walk around happy, give them some individualism, let them sell the best way they sell, challenge them, of course, and let them know when they hit those expectations that you wanted. Don't say like, well, yeah, that's what I expected of you. Cheer with them. Celebrate with them. When your favorite baseball player does what's expected of him, do you just sit down on your couch when you just say, good? No, you do your thing cheer and you get excited. Sorry, I know that's like
that's a great analogy. Really, it is.
Yeah. But
employers should do that to their employees. Yeah.
That is absolutely it. And you know what? Unless the CEO is in the building, you don't need to worry about this respectability. And saying, oh, my employee's going to see me as lesser because they cheered for me. If you are ruling by fear, screw you. Like, honestly, I don't want to work for you either. So, like, don't, let that atmosphere down. If you're an employer right now, let it all go. Rule by happiness. Rule by positive incentives instead of negative reinforcements. Give people... make people happy, encourage that positive environment. I think things will be a lot better for you because people want to come back. They want to stay with you.
I would work for $4 an hour for a place that I love to go to and a person I wanted to make money for rather than somebody at 10. I'm going to make my tips regardless because I'm good at what I do. So I would much rather, I just don't care about that extra money. I'd rather be happy going to work on Reddit,
Yeah. Yeah, right. And I think that's exactly it. And I think that a positive environment is free. It involves changing your attitude. It involves, a lot of working one-on-one with your employees as well as working in groups and saying like, hey, here's what we're going for today. Like, let's be positive. Hey, I'm really impressed. Like, it involves saying that you're impressed with somebody and not being impressed being an expectation anymore. And I understand there's a lot of bosses that they just say, I don't think I have time to reward everybody for doing a good job. That's actually a good problem to have. Just reward it whenever you see it then. If you say, if you say, because I've had a bunch of sticks into my bosses be like, I can't go around patting you on the back every time you do a good job. Okay, well, doesn't that speak to how awesome your employees are? So that's not an excuse. Just say like, man, you're so awesome. I don't even have time to tell you you're awesome every time you're awesome.
Yeah.
You know what? Use that line. Steal it from me.
Yeah.
You say it and people will feel so much better.
Hodey, I want to work for your restaurant. Like, I want to be your bartender. I'm just so motivated right now.
When I was the front of house and kitchen manager at Texas Red House, we had a lot of fun. It was a very positive environment for a little bit. Yeah. It was
No, I've mostly worked in the service industry most of my life, and I have had professional careers, but I always did it part-time just because it's great extra money, and you can it's always something I can walk back into and pick right back up. So it's definitely a skill. People say it's unskilled. They're stupid and have never tried it. But I've always mostly enjoyed the camaraderie and employees. Like you're just, when you're pushing it out from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock, there's just this camaraderie, and there's this thing you're going to get it done. And it's you're kind of losing your mind, but you're going to get it done and get paid. It's a wonderful feeling. You're producing something every day. You see the results of your production every day. It's very satisfying. It really is. So kudos to those people still doing it right now. I feel for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And fight for what you're worth. I mean, don't be a dick, but fight for what you're worth. And if you have a good boss, they're probably going to pay you for it, to be honest.
Yeah. Or at least recognize you for it. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's a tough time right now. And you know what? I would say feel free to vote with your feet, whether it's your boss's fault or not. If you can make more money elsewhere, or if you could receive better, whatever you want elsewhere, whether it's benefits, money, hours, whatever, do what benefits you the most. Because one of the cool things
one bit of advice, go to your boss first. Go to your boss first and say, this person offered me something. You will be damn surprised, if you're a good employee, how much money that person will probably offer you more.
Yep.
So never forget to do that. I think a lot of young people forget that you can go negotiate for your wages with your current employer too. So.
Yeah. Everybody, I'm sure all the cooks make the same. Nope. That's not true.
That's bullshit. Yeah.
That's an inaccurate
If the cook
statement.
that shows up and does well and never calls off, says I'm leaving, he's gonna get a couple bucks more an hour. It's just gonna happen.
Yep.
So
I had kitchen employees making everything from the minimum $7.23 an hour here in Utah to $15 an hour. And yep. And I'm telling you right now, the ones I paid $15 an hour were worth every penny of it.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah. So never doubt that you're worth not retraining somebody. You're worth, if you're a good employee, say I'm going here, this person offering this, and tell your boss that. So, but this has been I've really enjoyed this discussion, Hodey, because it's kind of libertarians tend to base our economical and political discussions around big business and government. And I think we forget a lot of the little guys, which actually make everything tick. So it's been very enjoyable. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you as well. You're good. A lot of anarchists get kind of government bad, whereas I think you and I are very much a people and free market good thing. And I think
I don't hate government for being government. I hate government because it's force. You know what I mean? I'm not just going to say everything. Yeah, I'm not reactionary in that sense. Because we're the last true anarcho-capitalists.
Right. Yep. For the last two of us, we recognize it for what it is. And we're just more educated than everybody else. That's all it is.
Right, exactly.
If you ever
That's
want
all
to
it
join
is.
us, I believe Trishee has its certificate or a degree to get. So I mean, ask her.
I do. It's hanging on my wall. Don't ask me for it.
She printed 2 copies. I have the other one. We can photocopy probably one more. I don't know. Probably not.
So I pay for mine in Bitcoin. But so, Hodey Johns, where can people find you? What you're up to? If they want to say, I want to follow Hodey and listen to him because he makes a lot of logical sense and he's not an asshole. So where can they find you?
So if you Google me, Hodey Johns, I write for various video game outlets, so you'll find some of my works there if you want to see my video game stuff. I work. Let's see. So that's my video game stuff. You can find me. Just search for Hodey Johns, Hodey. Last name Johns, Johns. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. I believe I'm the Hode Man on Twitter. I believe I'm the Hode Man on Instagram as well. I love smoking meat. I love cheese. You'll find a lot of that. And of course, on my longer, I don't like the 140 character limit on Twitter is not near, as you can probably tell, not nearly long enough. And so most of the time, if I post something deep, it's probably on Facebook. So that's probably the one to hit me up if you're looking for politics and economy and that side of things. Please tune in to the Weird Libertarians Network. Enemy of My Enemy is the name of the show. It's going well, but it'd be better with you listening to it because it's so much fun. We have some great audience interactions. And I'm loving it. I mean, it's new. I think we're on episode 6 now, but it is, I am loving it. I have some great co-hosts to choose from. Like I said, there's a left, right, and center libertarian on every show, and you're going to hear a lot of great debate and a lot of great unity. And so, Enemy of My Enemy is that show. Check that out. You can find me as an occasional guest host on Gingerarchy, another good show from the Weird Libertarians Network. I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds me here. Yeah.
Hey. No, seriously, if you want to follow, if you're listening on stereo, which is probably just quite a few people, most people are libertarians that listen, but Hodey is a really balanced libertarian. He is an anarcho-capitalist, but I would say he's more center. And so if you don't want to listen to some crazy-faced person that wants to say really horrible things to get popular, then listen to Hodey because he just says really great things, to be honest. So definitely follow him. Go to wearelibertarians.com. You can find all of our shows there, all of a bunch of other wonderful shows. And I just want to close this out by saying thank you all for listening. Peace, grace to you, and fuck the state.